MG-42 machine gun, Hitler's buzzsaw. In the chaos of World War II, one sound struck terror into the hearts of Allied soldiers. A deep, thunderous roar that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. It wasn't artillery. It wasn't tanks. It was the chilling voice of the MG-42, the fastest and deadliest machine gun of its time, a weapon so effective that even its enemies respected it. When the MG-42 debuted in 1942, it revolutionized infantry warfare. Built as a successor to the MG-34, this weapon combined simplicity, reliability, and terrifying firepower. The German army needed something that could be mass-produced quickly without sacrificing performance, and the MG-42 delivered exactly that. With a rate of fire between 1,200 and 1,500 rounds per minute, its burst was so fast that individual shots blurred into a continuous roar, earning it the nickname Hitler's buzzsaw. But the MG-42 wasn't just about sound. It was about engineering precision. Crafted largely from stamped steel parts, it was cheap and easy to produce compared to other machine guns of the era. German factories could churn them out rapidly, equipping entire divisions with automatic firepower that outclassed nearly everything the Allies could field. On the battlefield, the MG-42 was a force multiplier. A single two-man crew, a gunner and an assistant, could hold off waves of attacking infantry. The weapon's bipod and tripod mounts allowed it to be used both as a light and heavy machine gun. It was accurate, quick to reload, and devastatingly effective at suppressing enemy movements. Allied soldiers often described the experience of facing it as being under a sheet of fire. The weapon could literally cut tree branches in half and tear through walls or light vehicles. However, such immense power came with drawbacks. The MG-42's blistering rate of fire meant barrels overheated quickly. German crews were trained to swap barrels every few minutes, and each gun came with several spares. Carrying extra ammunition and barrels became a logistical burden, but for the Germans, it was worth it. They understood that the MG-42 wasn't just a gun, it was a psychological weapon. The moment Allied soldiers heard its mechanical scream, they dove for cover. As the war progressed, the MG-42 earned a fearsome reputation in every major theater, from the beaches of Normandy to the frozen steppes of Russia. It tore through waves of Soviet troops and slowed the Allied advance across Europe. Even when Germany began to lose ground, the MG-42 ensured that every inch of territory was fought for with ferocity. What's remarkable is how influential the MG-42's design became. After the war, nearly every modern machine gun drew inspiration from it. The US M60, the Belgian FNMAG, and even the German MG3, still used today, trace their lineage to the MG-42. Its legacy continues on modern battlefields, more than 80 years after it was first fired. The MG-42 represented the height of German engineering during World War II, a perfect mix of innovation and brutal efficiency. It was more than just a weapon. It was a statement of intent, fast, precise, and deadly. While the Allies may have won the war, they never forgot the sound of the MG-42 echoing across the battlefields of Europe, a sound that symbolized the might and menace of the German war machine. Panzer IV, the backbone of the Wehrmacht. Before the Tiger and Panther tanks stole the spotlight, one machine quietly carried the bulk of Germany's armored might across Europe, the Panzerkampfwagen IV, or simply Panzer IV. It wasn't the biggest, the fastest, or the most armored, but it was the workhorse of the German army, the tank that fought from the first day of the war to the very last. When it rolled into service in 1937, the Panzer IV was originally designed as a support tank, meant to provide covering fire for lighter panzers like the Panzer III. Armed with a short-barreled 75mm KWK-37L/24 gun, it excelled at blasting fortifications and infantry positions. But as the war escalated, so did its role, evolving into one of the most versatile and battle-proven tanks of World War II. The genius of the Panzer IV lay in its adaptability. Unlike many tanks of the era, it was built with enough design flexibility to handle upgrades. When Germany invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, the Wehrmacht quickly discovered that their existing tanks were no match for the Soviet T-34, a machine faster, tougher, and better armed. Instead of scrapping the Panzer IV, German engineers reimagined it. They added thicker armor, upgraded the suspension, and fitted it with a long-barreled 75mm KWK-40L/43 gun, capable of piercing even the formidable T-34's armor. With these improvements, the Panzer IV transformed from a support vehicle into a frontline predator. By 1943, the Panzer IV became the mainstay of German armored divisions. It was everywhere, from the scorching deserts of North Africa under Rommel's Afrika Korps to the snow-covered fields of the Eastern Front. Crews praised its reliability, especially compared to the more complex Panther and Tiger tanks that often broke down in combat. It was easy to maintain, relatively simple to repair, and could operate in harsh conditions where other tanks faltered. Production numbers tell the story of its importance. Over 8,500 Panzer IVs were built, making it the most produced German tank of the war. And unlike the heavy Tigers, which were few and specialized, the Panzer IV was a true soldier's tank, affordable, flexible, and available in large numbers. It was the tank that held the line at Stalingrad, led the charge in Poland, and faced the Allied invasion in Normandy. The Panzer IV wasn't invincible. By the later years of the war, it was increasingly outgunned by newer Allied tanks, such as the Sherman Firefly and the IS-2. Its armor, once formidable, became vulnerable to high-velocity shells and air attacks. But Germany had no choice. It couldn't replace the Panzer IV quickly enough with newer models. So they kept upgrading it, adding side skirts, Scherzen, Zimmerit coating to prevent magnetic mines, and other field modifications to keep it relevant. What truly made the Panzer IV stand out wasn't just its battlefield performance, but its strategic impact. It was the one tank Germany could mass-produce without crippling its industry, and the one vehicle capable of performing nearly every armored role in the field. It became the backbone of the panzer divisions, the foundation of blitzkrieg tactics, and the tank that gave German armor its fearsome reputation during the early years of the war. Even after the fall of the Third Reich, the Panzer IV's legacy endured. Many captured units were used by countries like Syria and Spain well into the 1960s, a testament to its durability and engineering quality. Few tanks in history have served for so long, in so many roles, across so many battlefields. In the grand machinery of Hitler's war, the Panzer IV was not a symbol of excess or ambition. It was the practical heart of German armored warfare. It might not have had the shock value of the Tiger or the innovation of the Panther, but it was the tank that did the hard fighting, the tank that made blitzkrieg possible, and the tank that carried the German army through 6 brutal years of global conflict. Messerschmitt Bf 109, the Luftwaffe's legendary Predator. When people imagine the skies of World War II, one silhouette dominates above all others, the Messerschmitt Bf 109. Sleek, fast, and deadly, it was the backbone of the Luftwaffe and one of the most successful fighter aircraft ever built. Designed by Willy Messerschmitt and first flown in 1935, the Bf 109 was revolutionary for its time. It was one of the first all-metal monoplane fighters with a closed cockpit and retractable landing gear, innovations that set the standard for the next generation of fighter design. By the time war broke out in 1939, it was already a fearsome machine, capable of outclimbing and outmaneuvering most opponents in the sky. Powered by a Daimler-Benz DB601 engine, the early Bf 109 models could reach speeds exceeding 350 miles per hour, 560 kilometers per hour. Later variants, like the Bf 109G Gustav, pushed that to over 400 miles per hour, with improved armor, weapons, and performance at higher altitudes. Its standard armament of machine guns and 20mm cannons made it lethal in dogfights, while optional configurations allowed it to tackle bombers or ground targets as needed. But what truly made the Bf 109 legendary was who flew it. The world's top fighter aces, including Erich Hartmann, Gerhard Barkhorn, and Gunther Roll, all flew the 109. Hartmann alone scored 352 aerial victories, a record that remains unbeaten to this day. The Bf 109 wasn't just an aircraft, it was the sword of Germany's air war. During the Battle of Britain in 1940, the Bf 109 served as the Luftwaffe's spearhead against the Royal Air Force. Fast and agile, it dominated the skies at low to medium altitudes. But the campaign also exposed its weaknesses. With limited range, the Bf 109s couldn't protect bombers deep into British airspace, forcing them to turn back early and leaving the bombers vulnerable. This shortcoming proved costly, and marked one of the Luftwaffe's first strategic failures. As the war expanded, so did the 109's battlefield. From the frozen steppes of Russia to the burning deserts of North Africa, the Bf 109 fought everywhere. Its adaptability was astonishing, modified for high-altitude interception, bomber escort, ground attack, and reconnaissance. The aircraft evolved through numerous variants, from the early Bf 109B to the advanced Bf 109K, each iteration refining its performance to meet the changing tides of war. Even by 1944, when newer Allied fighters like the P-51 Mustang and Spitfire Mk9 began to outclass it, the Bf 109 remained a formidable foe. Its high climb rate and acceleration still allowed skilled German pilots to win dogfights through tactics and precision. And despite production challenges from Allied bombings, Germany managed to build over 33,000 Bf 109s, making it the most produced fighter in history. Yet the 109's legacy is not only about numbers or technology, it's about endurance. It flew in nearly every major air battle of the war, serving from the invasion of Poland to the final defense of Berlin. It outlived its designers' expectations and became a symbol of both German ingenuity and desperation as the war dragged on. After the war, the Bf 109 continued to fly, used by countries like Spain, Finland, Israel, and Switzerland well into the 1950s. Few war machines have ever had such a long and storied life. In the grand theater of World War II, the Messerschmitt Bf 109 was not just a fighter, it was Germany's aerial icon, a weapon that carved its name into the skies of Europe. Beautiful, deadly, and relentless, it embodied the Luftwaffe's rise and fall, a predator that once ruled the clouds. U-Boat Type 7, the silent hunter of the Atlantic. Beneath the dark rolling waves of the Atlantic Ocean, a different kind of war raged. Unseen, relentless, and terrifying. It was here that Germany's Type 7 U-boat earned its reputation as one of the most feared weapons of World War II. Known as the silent hunter of the Atlantic, it was the backbone of the Kriegsmarine submarine fleet, and for a time, it nearly brought Britain to its knees. The Type 7 wasn't the biggest submarine of the war, nor the most advanced on paper, but it was the most effective. Introduced in 1936, this submarine was designed for speed, stealth, and endurance. Measuring about 67 meters long, it could dive to depths of 750 feet, 230 meters, and travel thousands of miles across the open ocean. Armed with 14 torpedoes and a deck gun, it could strike convoys from the shadows and disappear before the enemy even knew what hit them. At the heart of its success was tactical innovation. German Admiral Karl Donitz developed the famous Wolfpack strategy, groups of U-boats coordinating by radio to attack Allied convoys at night. This turned the Atlantic into a hunting ground. Ships vanished in the darkness as torpedoes ripped through their hulls, cargoes of food, fuel, and weapons sank to the depths, and Allied sailors faced the grim terror of an invisible enemy. By 1941–42, the U-boats were at their peak. The Atlantic became known as the happy time for German submariners, as Allied defenses struggled to respond. In 1942 alone, U-boats sank over 1,000 Allied ships, threatening to cut off Britain's lifeline of supplies and starve the island into surrender. The seas became a graveyard of twisted steel and burning oil, a haunting symbol of Germany's underwater dominance. Yet the men aboard these submarines lived in brutal conditions. Life inside a Type 7 was claustrophobic and perilous. The crew of 44 men shared a space barely large enough to move, surrounded by machinery, diesel fumes, and the constant sound of creaking metal as water pressure squeezed the hull. Missions could last for weeks or even months, with limited food, stale air, and the ever-present fear of detection. Still, they were among the most disciplined and courageous sailors of the war, knowing that one depth charge could end it all. But as with many of Germany's powerful weapons, success bred overconfidence. The Allies adapted quickly. Advances in sonar, ASTIC, radar, air patrols, and long-range escort ships turned the tide. The introduction of escort carriers and Lee light-equipped aircraft made it nearly impossible for U-boats to surface undetected. By 1943, the hunters had become the hunted. Losses skyrocketed. More than 700 of the 1,162 Type 7 submarines built were destroyed before the war's end. Despite their eventual downfall, the U-boats changed naval warfare forever. Their threat forced the Allies to innovate, creating the convoy system, improved anti-submarine tactics, and even pioneering efforts in code-breaking, such as the Allied capture of Enigma machines from German submarines. These breakthroughs not only helped win the Battle of the Atlantic, but also reshaped modern naval strategy. The psychological impact of the U-boat war was immense. Every Allied sailor who ventured into the Atlantic knew that a torpedo could strike without warning. For Britain, the threat was existential, a reminder that control of the seas could decide the fate of nations. By the time the war ended, the Type 7 had become a legend, both feared and respected. Its legacy lived on in the designs of post-war submarines, influencing naval engineering for decades. Even today, the silhouette of a Type 7, sleek, streamlined, and menacing, remains one of the most recognizable images of World War II. It was a weapon born from precision and desperation, a machine that embodied Germany's mastery of engineering and its fatal belief in total domination. Silent, deadly, and almost unstoppable in its prime, the Type 7 U-boat will forever be remembered as the iron shark of the Atlantic, the unseen predator that brought the world's greatest navies to the brink of disaster. 88mm flak gun, the most feared anti-tank and anti-aircraft gun. When discussing German weaponry in World War II, few weapons inspire as much awe and terror as the 88mm flak gun. Originally designed as an anti-aircraft artillery piece, the Flak 88, or ACT, quickly earned a reputation as one of the most versatile and devastating weapons of the war. Its dual role as a sky destroyer and a tank killer made it indispensable to the Wehrmacht and a nightmare for Allied forces. The 88mm gun was introduced in 1933, and by the outbreak of war in 1939, it had already proven its precision and range. Designed to shoot down high-flying aircraft, it could deliver explosive shells at altitudes exceeding 30,000 feet, making it extremely difficult for enemy bombers to operate safely. However, it was on the ground where the 88's reputation truly skyrocketed. German troops quickly discovered that its high-velocity shells could penetrate the armor of almost any tank at long range, a fact that shocked Allied armored divisions. The Flak 88 saw its first major success during the North African campaign under General Erwin Rommel. In the harsh desert terrain, mobility was limited, and armored confrontations were inevitable. Rommel and his gunners ingeniously deployed the 88 as an anti-tank weapon, hiding it behind dunes or camouflaging it among rocks. From hundreds of meters away, the gun could destroy British Matildas, Crusaders, and even the heavily armored Valentine tanks. Its precision and power earned it legendary status among both German and Allied soldiers. The versatility of the 88 was unmatched. It could switch from targeting aircraft to engaging ground targets with astonishing speed. German crews became experts at exploiting its dual role, often using the Flak 88 to repel armored assaults, support infantry, or defend strategic positions. Its long range meant that tanks and vehicles had to approach cautiously, under the constant threat of annihilation. Technically, the 88mm Flak combined accuracy, power, and mobility. Mounted on a versatile carriage, it could be towed by vehicles or set up in semi-permanent positions. The gun fired shells at velocities exceeding 2,900 feet per second, capable of piercing over 100 millimeters of armor at distances of more than 1,500 meters. Its effectiveness forced the Allies to adapt, designing heavier tanks, angling armor, and coordinating attacks to minimize exposure to the deadly gun. The 88 also became symbolic of German ingenuity and battlefield adaptation. Though initially intended for air defense, soldiers and commanders recognized its potential against ground forces and deployed it with devastating effect in France, Italy, and the Eastern Front. From the frozen fields of Russia to the sun-scorched sands of Africa, the Flak 88 was everywhere, always deadly. Its psychological impact was equally significant. Allied soldiers spoke of the 88 with fear. A single gun could halt an armored column, destroy fortifications, and keep entire units pinned down. The unmistakable whistle of an incoming 88 shell became synonymous with imminent destruction, and its efficiency often tilted the balance of local engagements. By the war's end, the 88 had cemented its place as one of the most iconic German weapons of World War II. It influenced post-war artillery design and remained a model for high-velocity guns for decades. Beyond its technical brilliance, it represented the German military's adaptability, precision engineering, and ruthless efficiency. In summary, the 88mm Flak gun was far more than an anti-aircraft weapon. It was a multi-role killing machine, part guardian of the skies, part destroyer of armored forces. Its speed, accuracy, and firepower made it feared by all who faced it. From North Africa to Normandy, the Act left a trail of destruction and secured its reputation as one of the most formidable weapons of World War II. Tiger Eye tank, symbol of German armored superiority. When the Tiger Eye rolled onto the battlefields of World War II in 1942, it instantly became a symbol of German armored power. Its very presence struck fear into Allied soldiers, and for good reason. The Tiger Eye was more than just a tank. It was a meticulously engineered war machine designed to dominate any battlefield it entered. Developed by Henschel and Son, the Tiger Eye was Germany's answer to increasingly powerful Soviet tanks encountered on the Eastern Front, such as the T-34 and KV-1. It weighed nearly 57 tons and boasted armor up to 120 millimeters thick, making it nearly impervious to most Allied anti-tank weapons at standard combat ranges. Its primary weapon, the 88 mm KWK-36L/56 gun, was legendary for its accuracy and destructive power. It could pierce enemy armor from over 1,500 meters, often destroying tanks before the enemy even knew it was being targeted. The Tiger I was designed for psychological as well as tactical impact. A single Tiger on the battlefield could halt entire Allied armored advances. Units commanded by skilled tank aces, such as Michael Wittmann of the 101st SS Heavy Panzer Battalion, became legendary for their kill counts and battlefield prowess. Wittmann himself destroyed dozens of enemy tanks in a single engagement, demonstrating the Tiger's terrifying efficiency in skilled hands. However, this power came at a cost. The Tiger I's immense size and weight made it slow and cumbersome, with a top speed of just 24 miles per hour, 38 kilometers per hour, on roads and much less cross-country. Its mechanical complexity meant frequent breakdowns, and its fuel consumption was enormous, an issue that became critical as Germany faced supply shortages later in the war. Each Tiger required months to manufacture, with immense quantities of steel, labor, and resources, limiting the number that could be fielded. Only about 1,350 Tigers were produced during the entire war, far fewer than the tens of thousands of Allied tanks it faced. Despite these limitations, the Tiger I had a profound tactical and psychological effect. Its presence alone could change enemy strategies, forcing opposing forces to divert artillery, air power, and infantry to counter a single tank. On the Eastern Front, it dominated the wide-open plains, engaging Soviet armor with devastating efficiency. In Normandy and other European theaters, its heavy armor and powerful gun gave German units a temporary edge, even when outnumbered. The Tiger I also exemplified German engineering philosophy: overbuilt, precise, and lethal. Unlike lighter tanks that relied on speed and maneuverability, the Tiger focused on survivability and firepower. Crews trained extensively to maximize its capabilities, often coordinating in small, elite units to create concentrated pockets of armored dominance. Yet, as the war dragged on, the Tiger I's weaknesses became more pronounced. Allied forces developed specialized tactics, including coordinated tank attacks, artillery ambushes, and airstrikes, to neutralize its advantage. The introduction of heavier Allied tanks like the M26 Pershing and Soviet IS-2 began to counter the Tiger's superiority. Additionally, logistical difficulties, from mechanical breakdowns to fuel shortages, limited its operational impact in the later years of the war. Despite its drawbacks, the Tiger I's legend endured, symbolizing the peak of German armored design. Its combination of firepower, armor, and psychological presence made it one of the most feared tanks of the war. Soldiers on both sides remembered it not only as a machine but as a mechanical monster, embodying both the brilliance and the obsession of German engineering during World War II. In the history of armored warfare, the Tiger I stands as a benchmark of power and intimidation, a tank that could dominate in the right hands, inspire awe and fear, and leave an indelible mark on the memory of those who faced it. It was a true icon of German armored superiority, representing both the strengths and the strategic limitations of Hitler's war machine. V-1 Flying Bomb Buzz Bomb, the world's first cruise missile. Among the many terrifying innovations of Germany during World War II, few weapons were as infamous as the V-1 Flying Bomb, nicknamed the Buzz Bomb by Allied civilians for the distinctive drone of its pulse-jet engine. It was the world's first operational cruise missile, designed not just to destroy targets but to terrorize entire populations, marking a dramatic leap in modern warfare technology. The V-1 was developed under the Nazi regime's secret weapons program, led by Werner von Braun and his team at Peenemünde. Unlike conventional aircraft, it had no pilot, relying instead on a gyroscope and simple autopilot system to guide it to preset coordinates. Powered by a pulse-jet engine, it traveled at speeds of up to 400 miles per hour, 640 kilometers per hour, and had a range of roughly 150 miles, allowing it to strike targets deep inside Allied territory, particularly London and southern England. The first V-1 attacks began in June 1944, shortly after the D-Day landings. Germany intended the V-1 to disrupt the Allied advance, damage infrastructure, and demoralize civilians. Launched from mobile ramps in northern France, these unmanned bombs rained destruction on cities, creating widespread fear. The weapon's psychological effect often exceeded its physical damage. The ominous buzzing sound of an approaching V-1 became a signal of imminent doom, and civilians scrambled to shelters as the bombs fell indiscriminately. Technically, the V-1 was a marvel of mechanical simplicity and deadly efficiency. It carried a 1,870-pound high-explosive warhead and used a catapult launch system, sometimes assisted by steam or rocket boosters. Once airborne, it followed a predetermined course, and as fuel ran low, it would descend and crash into its target. Its guidance system was primitive by modern standards, but remarkably effective given the technology of the era. Thousands were produced, making it Germany's first mass-produced long-range missile. The V-1's impact on the war was significant, though not decisive. Over 9,500 V-1s were launched against Britain, causing approximately 6,000 civilian deaths and 17,000 injuries, as well as significant property damage. London bore the brunt of the attacks, but other cities, including Antwerp and Liège, were also targeted. The relentless bombardment forced the Allies to develop countermeasures, including anti-aircraft artillery, fighter interceptions, and barrage balloon defenses ***. Pilots flying Spitfires, Tempests, and Mustangs were trained specifically to intercept V-1s, sometimes using daring tactics like tipping the wings to flip the missiles out of control. Despite its ingenuity, the V-1 had limitations. Its accuracy was poor, often missing targets by several hundred meters, and it could be shot down or destroyed with sufficient anti-aircraft defenses. Moreover, the technology had inherent vulnerabilities. The pulse-jet engine was loud and easily detectable, giving early warning of incoming attacks, and the missile lacked the ability to change course once launched. However, the legacy of the V-1 far outlasted its wartime use. It inspired the development of more advanced cruise missiles and laid the groundwork for post-war rocket and missile technology. Captured German engineers, including Werner von Braun, went on to play critical roles in both American and Soviet missile programs, eventually contributing to the space race. The V-1 represents a chilling combination of innovation and terror, a weapon designed not just to kill but to instill fear. Its buzzing approach became a psychological weapon almost as effective as its explosive payload. In the history of warfare, the V-1 was revolutionary, marking the transition from traditional artillery and bombs to guided missiles and modern precision weapons. In sum, the V-1 flying bomb was more than just a weapon of destruction. It was a symbol of Germany's technological audacity and desperation, a harbinger of the missile age, and a deadly instrument that forced the Allies to innovate under pressure. Its presence in the skies of World War II remains one of the most haunting images of a conflict defined by speed, ingenuity, and fear. Panther tank, perfect blend of firepower, mobility, and armor. Among Germany's most formidable armored creations of World War II, the Panther tank, Panzerkampfwagen V, stands out as a masterpiece of engineering, designed to combine firepower, protection, and mobility into one deadly package. Introduced in 1943, the Panther was Germany's response to the Soviet T-34, which had proven superior to earlier German medium tanks like the Panzer IV on the Eastern Front. The Panther was intended to dominate the battlefield by addressing both the weaknesses of its predecessors and the evolving threats posed by Allied armor. The Panther's design philosophy was revolutionary for its time. It featured sloped frontal armor up to 80 mm thick, increasing effective thickness and improving its ability to deflect incoming shells. This design principle, inspired by the T-34, allowed the Panther to withstand hits from most Allied and Soviet tank weapons at standard combat ranges. Its high-velocity 75 mm KWK-42L/70 gun could penetrate enemy armor with lethal efficiency, giving it a decisive edge in tank-to-tank engagements. Unlike the earlier Tiger I, the Panther was faster and more maneuverable, capable of reaching speeds of up to 34 miles per hour, 55 kilometers per hour, on roads while maintaining excellent cross-country mobility. The Panther first saw action during the Battle of Kursk in July 1943, one of the largest tank battles in history. Although mechanical issues and inexperience among crews limited its initial effectiveness, it soon proved its battlefield potential. The Panther's combination of armor, firepower, and speed allowed it to engage multiple enemy tanks at long range while taking minimal damage. Its long barrel gun could destroy Soviet T-34s and KV-1s from distances where they could barely respond, making it a fearsome adversary for any armored force. Production of the Panther faced challenges. The tank was complex and resource-intensive to manufacture, requiring high-quality steel and precise engineering. Early models suffered from mechanical reliability issues, particularly with transmissions and final drives. Despite these problems, the Panther became the backbone of Germany's medium tank divisions by 1944, with nearly 6,000 units built throughout the war. Its presence on the battlefield forced the Allies to adapt tactics, including coordinated tank and artillery assaults, air support, and numerical superiority, to counter its threat. The Panther was versatile. It excelled in both defensive and offensive operations, whether holding lines against Soviet armored advances or spearheading assaults in Western Europe. Its long-range gun allowed it to engage targets before enemy tanks could respond, while its mobility enabled flanking maneuvers and rapid repositioning on the battlefield. Crews praised its ergonomics, visibility, and firepower, though maintenance in harsh conditions was challenging. Psychologically, the Panther instilled fear and respect. Allied tank commanders often described the Panther as a near-perfect machine, heavily armored, fast, and deadly accurate. It symbolized the peak of German armored design philosophy, a vehicle engineered not only to destroy enemy tanks but to dominate battlefields strategically. When Panthers appeared, infantry and armored units had to reconsider tactics, often retreating or calling in artillery and air support to neutralize the threat. Despite its strengths, the Panther was not invincible. Its complexity made it vulnerable to mechanical failure, and Allied combined arms tactics, integrating artillery, infantry, and air power, could eventually overcome it. However, when properly crewed and maintained, a Panther could often outgun and outmaneuver any medium tank the Allies deployed. Its balance of firepower, armor, and mobility earned it a reputation as one of the most effective tanks of the war, bridging the gap between the heavy Tiger and the lighter Panzer IV. The Panther tank represents more than just a weapon. It exemplifies German innovation, adaptability, and engineering skill under wartime pressure. Its legacy influenced post-war tank design, inspiring modern armored vehicles that prioritize sloped armor, high-velocity guns, and mobility, principles first mastered in the Panther. In conclusion, The Panther tank was the ultimate blend of destructive power, battlefield agility, and protection. It was not only a physical force but a psychological one, capable of shaping engagements and forcing enemies to react. From Kursk to the forests of France, the Panther left a lasting mark as one of the greatest tanks of World War II, a true symbol of German armored warfare mastery. V-2 rocket, the world's first ballistic missile. At the pinnacle of German technological innovation during World War II stood the V-2 rocket, the world's first long-range guided ballistic missile. Known in German as Vergeltungswaffe 2, Retribution Weapon 2, the V-2 represented a terrifying leap in warfare, a weapon that could strike without warning, traveling faster than the speed of sound and delivering destruction with unprecedented precision. It was a machine that ushered in the age of modern rocketry and space exploration, but during the war, it was a symbol of terror and the deadly ambition of the Nazi regime. The development of the V-2 began in the late 1930s under the leadership of Wernher von Braun at Peenemünde. Unlike conventional artillery, the V-2 used liquid-fueled rocket propulsion to reach its target. Standing over 14 meters tall and weighing around 12,500 kilograms, it could carry a 1,000-kilogram high-explosive warhead over 300 kilometers, 186 miles. Once launched, it reached speeds of 3,500 miles per hour, 5,600 kilometers per hour, striking targets in minutes and making interception nearly impossible. The V-2 was first used in combat in September 1944, primarily against London and later Antwerp and Liège. Unlike the V-1 flying bomb, the V-2's supersonic speed meant that civilians heard only the explosion, never the approach, creating a psychological terror far beyond conventional bombing. It was a weapon designed not merely to kill but to break morale, demonstrating that Germany could strike anywhere at any time. The rocket was also a marvel of engineering. Its guidance system used gyroscopes and accelerometers to control trajectory, allowing it to hit targets with remarkable accuracy for the era. The V-2's propulsion system, using ethanol and liquid oxygen, represented a significant technological leap. Engineers had to solve unprecedented challenges in combustion, aerodynamics, and materials, creating a machine that was as much a laboratory experiment as a weapon of war. Production of the V-2 was a massive undertaking. Thousands of forced laborers in Peenemünde, Mittelbau-Dora, and other facilities built the rockets under horrific conditions, many dying in the process. By the war's end, around 3,000 V-2s had been launched, causing approximately 7,000 civilian deaths and widespread destruction. While their military effectiveness was limited, they could not reverse the course of the war. Their psychological impact was profound, striking terror into Allied cities and demonstrating the terrifying potential of rocket technology. The V-2's legacy extended far beyond World War II. Captured German engineers, including Wernher von Braun, played crucial roles in the American and Soviet missile programs, ultimately paving the way for the space race. The technology developed for the V-2 directly influenced the Saturn V rocket, which would later carry astronauts to the moon. In essence, the V-2 was the ancestor of modern ballistic missiles and space exploration vehicles, bridging wartime innovation with the future of aerospace technology. The V-2 also symbolized the duality of human ingenuity, a weapon of mass destruction on one hand, and a foundation for scientific achievement on the other. It combined precision engineering, cutting-edge material science, and advanced guidance systems in a way that had never been seen before. Yet, it was conceived for terror, using technology to kill and intimidate rather than to explore or create. In conclusion, the V-2 rocket was more than just a weapon. It was a revolutionary leap in warfare and engineering. Faster than sound, unstoppable by contemporary defenses, and capable of striking deep into enemy territory, It was the ultimate expression of Nazi Germany's technological ambition. While its direct military impact was limited, its psychological effect and technological legacy were immense. The V-2 stands as a testament to the ingenuity, ambition, and moral paradoxes of human innovation, marking the dawn of the ballistic missile age and forever changing the landscape of modern warfare. Messerschmitt Me 262, the first operational jet fighter in history. The Messerschmitt Me 262 holds a singular place in aviation history as the world's first operational jet fighter. Introduced by Nazi Germany in 1944, it represented a quantum leap in aircraft technology, capable of outpacing anything the Allies could field. The Me 262 was not just a plane, it was a symbol of German innovation, desperation, and the dawning of the jet age. Design of the Me 262 began in the late 1930s, with development led by Messerschmitt engineers under the supervision of the Luftwaffe. Powered by two Junkers Jumo 004 turbojet engines, it could achieve speeds of 540 miles per hour, 870 kilometers per hour, nearly 100 miles per hour faster than the fastest Allied piston engine fighters. This speed advantage allowed it to intercept bombers with ease and evade conventional enemy aircraft, making it a formidable addition to Germany's increasingly defensive air strategy. The Me 262 was armed with four 30 million Malawian Quachas 108 cannons, capable of tearing through even the heaviest Allied bombers. Some variants also carried our 4M air-to-air rockets, designed to destroy multiple bombers in a single pass. Its sleek, swept-wing design and jet propulsion gave it unmatched climb rates, acceleration, and overall agility for its era. Pilots who flew the Me 262 quickly realized that they were operating a machine centuries ahead of anything the Allies had in production. Despite its technical brilliance, the Me 262 faced significant challenges. Germany's deteriorating industrial base and the Allies' bombing campaigns slowed production. Early engines were prone to mechanical failure, and the aircraft required highly trained pilots to handle its speed and takeoff characteristics. Furthermore, Hitler's insistence on using the Me 262 as a fighter bomber delayed its deployment as a pure interceptor, reducing its early impact against Allied bombing raids. The Me 262's operational history, though brief, was impressive. It first entered combat in mid-1944, targeting Allied bombers over Germany. Skilled Luftwaffe pilots like Kurt Welter and Walter Nowotny exploited its speed and firepower to devastating effect, shooting down dozens of Allied aircraft in a single engagement. However, its numbers were limited. Only about 1,400 units were produced, and pilot shortages prevented large-scale effectiveness. The psychological effect of the Me 262 was enormous. Allied bomber crews feared encountering a fighter that could dive in, destroy a bomber, and be gone before they could react. Its presence forced tactical adjustments, including tighter formations, increased fighter escorts, and changes in bombing routes. Even so, the Allies' numerical superiority and technological adaptations, including improved radar and long-range escorts like the P-51 Mustang, limited the Me 262's strategic impact. The Me 262's legacy extended far beyond the war. Its design directly influenced post-war jet development in both the United States and the Soviet Union. Captured German engineers and design blueprints accelerated the development of aircraft like the F-86 Sabre, MiG-15, and early jet bombers, effectively laying the foundation for the modern jet age. In essence, the Me 262 was the bridge between piston-driven aviation and the high-speed jets that dominate the skies today. In conclusion, the Messerschmitt Me 262 was a remarkable blend of speed, firepower, and innovation, representing the pinnacle of German aeronautical engineering during World War II. While it arrived too late and in too few numbers to alter the course of the war, its technological advancements were profound. The Me-262 was not merely a weapon, it was a harbinger of the jet age, showcasing what could be achieved when engineering genius met wartime necessity, and forever changing the future of aerial combat.